You are standing in the suffocating heat of the imperial bedchamber. The air tastes of stale wine and burning frankincense. A heavy, blackened wax tablet rests on the cold marble table before you. Your fingernail catches on a fresh, deep groove carved into the wax. The stylus marks are rigid, hurried, and undeniable. In the flickering lamplight, the names reveal themselves, etched into the dark. Marcia traces the indentations of her own name. Her breathing hitches. She is the emperor's favorite concubine, adorned in gold, yet she is merely ink waiting to be spilled. Her eyes dart from the wax to a massive golden chalice resting on a silver tray. Her hands tremble. She reaches into the folds of her silk tunic and withdraws a small, thick glass vial. The stopper gives way with a soft, sickening pop. She tilts the glass over the chalice. A heavy, viscous poison drips into the emperor's favored vintage. It hits the surface. The dark liquid vanishes into the deep red wine. She swirls the heavy gold cup, listening to the soft slosh of the liquid inside. Heavy, rhythmic footsteps begin to echo down the long marble corridor outside. They are accompanied by the distinct metallic clanking of Praetorian armor. The emperor is returning from the arena. He will be sweating. He will demand a drink. A single drop of the poisoned wine sits on the marble rim. Marcia wipes it away with her thumb. She forces her facial muscles to relax, composing her features into a mask of absolute devotion. The heavy oak doors begin to swing inward. The bronze hinges groan. The year is 192 A.D. You are standing in the heart of the Palatine Hill, Rome, a city unaware that its god is about to die. Commodus steps into the room, his bare chest heaving, his hands slick with sweat. He reaches out for the cup. If stories of power, survival, and the erased atrocities of the ancient world pull you in, secure your place in the dark margins of history by subscribing to the channel now, before the living God takes his draught. The emperor's thirst did not begin in this room. The timeline violently snaps back to a time before the palace became a slaughterhouse, though the rot was already festering in the boy air. Decades earlier, an 11-year-old boy stands over a raging furnace deep within the imperial bathhouse. The harsh, erratic orange flames illuminate his smooth, pale face. The intense heat blisters the air. A terrified servant shivers on the wet stone tiles before him. Commodus steps forward. He dips a small, unyielding finger into the steaming bathwater. He finds it merely lukewarm. He withdraws his hand, turning his blank eyes toward the open furnace. He points. Palace guards instantly grab the pleading servant. They drag him across the wet floor. The servant's sandals scrape frantically against the stone. He screams, clawing at the arms of the guards, but he is hurled toward the roaring fire. The heavy iron door slams shut. The metallic clang rings off the vaulted ceilings. Moments later, a sickeningly sweet smell fills the humid air. The scent of roasting meat mixes with the steam. The young boy closes his eyes. He inhales deeply. A serene, tranquil smile spreads across his face. He turns and walks away, entirely satisfied. Behind the blistering iron of the furnace, out of the boy's sight, terrified attendants huddled together. In the center of their circle sits the living, trembling servant. The attendants had hastily thrown a slaughtered, blood-drained lamb into the fire. They needed to create the scent of burning flesh. They were terrified of a child's wrath. High above the bathhouse, an older, bearded philosopher emperor watches his son walk across the courtyard. The older man's shoulders slump. The grim realization of the monster he has unleashed upon Rome settles into his bones. The lamb saved one man, but as that boy places the heavy gold imperial crown upon his own head at age 19, the empire runs out of lambs. The roar of 50,000 citizens shakes the massive stone foundation of the Colosseum. Down in the hot sand, Commodus struts beneath the blistering, scorching sun. He wields a razor-sharp, glinting steel gladius. The metal catches the light, blinding in its polish. His opponent stands 20 paces away. He is an emaciated prisoner of war, dragged from a subterranean cell. The prisoner clutches a blunt, splintering wooden practice sword. From the shaded imperial box high above, Marcia watches the event unfold. The prisoner swings the heavy wood. His movements are slow, delayed by heavy sedatives forced down his throat before the gates opened. Commodus easily parries the sluggish attack. The dull, hollow thwack of rotting wood hitting solid steel echoes across the arena. Commodus does not go for a quick kill. He drops to one knee. He swings the steel blade in a wide arc. Up in the marble stands, hundreds of senators grip the edges of their stone seats. Their knuckles are stark white. Heavily armed Praetorian guards patrols the narrow aisles between the benches. The soldiers rest their leather-gloved hands on the heavy pommels of their swords. At a subtle hand signal from the guard commander, the senators react. They force their faces into wide, agonizing smiles. Their dry throats swallow hard. They begin to chant. Their voices crack with raw terror. They praise the emperor's unmatched divine skill. Down in the sand, Commodus basks in the forced adulation. He steps over the weeping, paralyzed man. He turns his face up toward the stands. He scans the rows of screaming politicians. He is waiting to see whose applause falters first. He locks eyes with an older senator in the third row. The man's hands stop clapping a fraction of a second too soon. The emperor raises his blade. He points the tip directly at the man's chest. The public slaughter cannot be contained to the arena. It spills over the walls and floods the private chambers of the Palatine Hill.
The palace transforms into a suffocating labyrinth of depravity. Marcia navigates the dimly lit corridors, pressing her spine against the cold marble walls to avoid the emperor's wandering gaze. Ahead of her, the massive bronze doors to the grand hall stand wide open. Inside the vast room, 300 young women and 300 young men are herded together like cattle. They are the empire's kidnapped concubines, stolen from the noble houses of Rome. Commodus sits on a raised velvet dais at the far end of the hall. His eyes gleam with a feverish, wet intensity. He drinks heavily from a silver cup. He barks sudden, sharp orders. He leans forward, watching the degradation, treating the captives as a ritual of absolute dominion. He raises a hand. The room falls dead silent. He demands a tray of silver surgical scalpels. Marcia watches from the deep shadows of a marble pillar. Her stomach hollows out. A male servant is forcefully brought forward and pushed to his knees before the dais. Commodus descends the steps. He calls himself a master healer. He picks up a small, gleaming scalpel. He approaches the kneeling man. He applies slow, deliberate pressure to the servant's bare shoulder. The servant bites his own lip, stifling a scream that would guarantee his execution. Commodus leans in close. He watches the mechanics of human fear with intense clinical fascination. He drops the scalpel. It clatters loudly against the silver platter. He orders a bath. It is his fourth of the day. As the servant bleeds out on the cold stone, Commodus turns. He holds the blood-soaked silk. He looks directly into the shadows. He calls Marcia's name. The horrors of the palace are soon dragged back into the public light.
The arena floor is littered with unusual, grotesque shapes. Commodus has ordered veterans of Rome's border wars rounded up from the filthy city streets. These are men missing legs or arms, discarded by the empire they fought for. They are dumped unceremoniously into the hot sand. Marcia stands rigidly behind the emperor's empty gilded throne in the imperial box. Her stomach churns. Down below, massive attendants forcefully strap large, heavy, snake-like tails made of weighted leather to the stumps and waists of the disabled men. The veterans writhe in the sand. The heavy appendages render them completely unable to stand or maneuver. Guards march down the line. They toss the men their only weapons. Soft, brine-soaked sea sponges hit the sand with wet, pathetic slaps. The heavy iron gates grind open. Commodus enters the arena. He is stripped of his armor, wielding a massive, knotted wooden club. He wears the pelt of a lion over his shoulders. He styles himself as the reincarnation of Hercules, stepping out to slay mythical, venomous serpents. He approaches the first helpless, maimed man. The veteran, missing his left leg, raises a wet sponge in a desperate, pathetic defense. Commodus grips the heavy wood with both hands. He swings the club with brutal, crushing force. The wood connects with the veteran's skull. The wet, heavy crunch of bone breaking under dense wood cracks through the utterly silent arena like thunder. Blood and brain matter spray across the hot sand.
Commodus moves methodically down the line. He smashes heads like rotten fruit. His chest heaves with the massive exertion. He wipes sweat from his brow. For this single afternoon of slaughter, he charges the Roman treasury 1,000,000 sesterces. The heavy coins pour from the treasury coffers, jingling as they are loaded into carts bound for the palace. He bankrupts the empire to fund his own massacres. The treasury runs completely dry. The arena is soaked in innocent blood. Commodus returns to the palace, his insatiable paranoia demanding new victims. He turns his dead eyes toward his own bloodline. The palace is instantly plunged into total chaos. Midnight raids sweep violently through the aristocratic quarters of the city. Marcia hides in a darkened alcove, pressing her hand over her own mouth. Armed Praetorian guards march down the hallway. They drag Lucilla, the emperor's own sister, screaming across the marble floor by her braided hair. Her plot to assassinate her brother has failed. Commodus stands at the far end of the hall. He watches his sister fight against the armor of the guards. His face is an impassive mask of cold stone. He raises a hand. He waves his fingers dismissively. In that single motion, he condemns the daughter of Marcus Aurelius to exile and immediate execution. The purge rapidly accelerates. Heavily armed men kick down the reinforced wooden doors of Empress Brutia Crispina's private chambers. The wood splinters loudly. The empress is dragged from her bed. She pleads her absolute innocence against sudden fabricated charges of adultery. Her screams echo through the vaulted ceilings as she is violently hauled away to the executioner's block. The imperial family is decimated. To fill the gaping void left by his slaughtered relatives, Commodus summons his remaining sisters. He forces them into his private, locked chambers. He corrupts the bloodline of Marcus Aurelius, violating his own siblings in a horrifying display of absolute godlike dominion. Marcia is summoned to the chambers next. She is forcibly draped in the heavy, cold jewels of the dead empress. The cold gold bites into her collarbone. She is given a new title. She is now the favorite. She knows she is surviving only by standing perfectly still in the bloody footprints of dead women. She knows the favorite is simply the last person standing in line for the slaughterhouse. Madness fully takes the reins of the empire.
Outside the palace walls, massive hemp ropes and wooden scaffolding surround the 100-foot bronze colossus of Nero. Hundreds of enslaved men heave against the thick ropes. The metal groans. With a deafening shriek of tearing bronze, they violently rip the massive head from the statue's shoulders. The gargantuan face plummets to the plaza below. It crashes into the pavement, shattering the heavy stone slabs into dust. In its place, the slaves winch up a massive, gleaming bronze replica of Commodus's own head. The sun reflects off his metal eyes. Inside the Senate House, Commodus stands before the terrified politicians. He forces them to pass a unanimous decree. He renames the city of Rome. He renames the legions. He renames every single month of the calendar year after himself. His paranoia reaches a fever pitch. He looks out the window into the courtyard. He sees a minor official walking toward the gates. The man's profile vaguely resembles a known political fugitive. Commodus snaps his fingers. The man is executed on the cobblestones seconds later. The Praetorian prefect, the most powerful military commander in Rome, is summoned to the throne room. Commodus looks down at the heavily armored general. He orders him to strip. The general hesitates. The guards draw their swords. The commander slowly removes his armor, dropping it to the floor. He stands completely naked before the court. Surrounded by laughing, armed sycophants, the commander of the legions is forced to dance in the center of the room. The humiliating slap of his bare feet against the marble echoes off the walls. His dignity is entirely shattered to ensure his absolute, unquestioning submission. Marcia watches the disgraced general spin. She realizes the terrifying truth. No rank, no loyalty, and no military might can stop a living god. Commodus sits back in his chair. He picks up a darkened wax tablet and a sharp metal stylus. He begins scratching new names into the soft wax. His paranoid gaze turns inward, resting on his most intimate circle. The timeline catches up. The heavy oak doors are open. Commodus drains the poisoned wine. The deep red liquid slides down his throat. He turns away from Marcia, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Seconds pass. The poison hits his stomach like a hammer. He violently doubles over. He drops the golden chalice. It clatters loudly against the stone. He collapses to his knees, clutching his stomach across the pristine white floor. The smell of sweet wine and stomach acid fills the room. The poison is failing. His massive body is rejecting the toxin. Marcia backs away, her spine hitting the wall. Praetorian Prefect Lytus and Chamberlain Eclectus step out from the shadows. They stare in sheer, paralyzing terror. The emperor is groaning, spitting fluid onto the tiles. If he recovers, if he draws enough breath to call for his guards, they will all be flayed alive. Lytus sprints from the room. His boots slide on the marble. He returns seconds later, dragging Narcissus, the emperor's massive, heavily starred wrestling partner. Commodus, weakened, trembling but enraged, struggles to his feet. He stumbles down the corridor toward the steaming bathhouse to wash the burning sickness away. Narcissus intercepts him at the edge of the steaming water. The wrestler lunges forward. Commodus roars. He fights back with the sudden, frenzied strength of a cornered animal. They crash over the edge into the deep pool. The water violently thrashes. Narcissus wraps his thick, heavily scarred arms around the emperor's thick neck. Commodus thrashes blindly. He claws desperately at Narcissus's face. He tears the wrestler's flesh with his fingernails. Water splashes violently over the sides of the marble pool, soaking the floor. Marcia stands frozen at the doorway. She clutches the broken wax tablet to her chest. She watches the living god fade. The muscles in Narcissus's back bunch and lock. The sickening, wet sound of immense pressure echoes over the water. The splashing grows weaker. It slows. It stops. Only the sound of the wrestler's heavy, ragged breathing remains. The emperor's massive body goes completely limp. He sinks beneath the surface of the steaming water. Dead silence fills the humid bathhouse. Narcissus slowly steps out of the water. He gasps for air. Marcia's hands go slack. The blackened wax tablet drops from her fingers. It hits the stone floor and shatters into pieces. The names are broken. They frantically move to the edge of the pool. They haul the heavy, dead, naked weight of the emperor out of the water. The body leaves a trail across the tiles. They wrap him tightly in thick, heavy woolen bedsheets, binding the fabric with rope. Under the thick cover of darkness, trusted slaves smuggled the bundled corpse out of the heavy palace gates. As the sun rises on the first day of the new year, the news hits the Senate floor. The suffocating terror breaks like a fever. The senators erupt into manic, rabid cheers. They do not wait for official decrees. They storm the city streets, armed with heavy hammers and iron bars. They swarm the public squares. They smash the pristine marble busts of Commodus, reducing his face to white dust. They scale tall wooden ladders. They take sharp iron chisels to public plaques and stone arches. The sharp, rhythmic ringing of iron against marble fills the city. They chisel his name away, desperate to erase his memory from physical existence. Marcia stands alone on a high palace balcony. She looks down at the city, tearing apart the man who broke them. She breathes in the cold, sharp morning air. Her own life is secure, for now. The monster is dead, but the heavy throne sits completely empty. The Praetorians still hold their drawn swords. The illusion of peace shatters almost instantly. Without a designated heir, the sheer weight of the empire violently fractures. Armies stationed on the borders turn their march toward Rome. 5 different men will slaughter each other for the throne within 12 bloody months. The deep, rotting chaos that Commodus seeded into the earth takes firm root. Exactly 1 year after the assassination in the bathhouse, heavy, synchronized footsteps echo down the corridor toward Marcia's chambers. Heavily armed guards march through her doors. The new regime cannot allow an emperor-killer to live, no matter how justified the assassination was. The precedent is too dangerous. She is grabbed by the arms. She is dragged out into the open courtyard. She is pushed to her knees on the exact same cold stone tiles where she watched so many others die. The executioner steps forward. He raises his heavy, polished steel blade into the air. Miles away, the massive arena of the Colosseum sits completely empty. The roaring crowds are gone. The sand is permanently stained a dark, rusted brown. In the center of the dirt, a single, discarded sea sponge lies drying in the harsh sun. It is brittle and hollow. Deep beneath the city, down in the forgotten palace vaults, a melted, blackened piece of wax gathers dust in the dark. It bears the faint, unreadable indentations of a madman's stylus. The empire survived the flesh of the man, but the god's rot remains embedded in the stone. History rarely buries its monsters completely. It merely smooths over the wax and waits for the next name to be carved. If you found yourself holding your breath in the dark corridors of Rome, ensure you don't miss our next descent into the erased margins of the past. Subscribe to the channel and prepare for the next descent.